Get all the different places that I have this posted. Oh, I love it. It is always the quick post everything before we go live. And we are live. Welcome, everybody, to the latest season of the Making Awesome podcast, season 3, episode 1. We got Neil here. Neil is best known for his 3D modeling skills. And if you don't know his 3D modeling skills, one, what's wrong with you? Two, go look it up. But, Neil, I'm going to need the Backstreet Boys from you. Who you are, where you from, what you did, and as long as you love me.
My name's Neil. I'm otherwise known as Neil 3D Prints Online. I'm based in the UK, actually near Heathrow. I'm just a stone's throw away from the Heathrow airport. I've been 3D printing and designing now for about 6 to 7 years. I actually started off with, I was doing experiments with Raspberry Pi, and I got myself interested in a Adafruit project called PyGirl 2.
Okay.
And for that, they recommended 3D printing a case for it. And because of that, it actually led me to buy my first 3D printer, which was a Flash Forge Finder. So I bought that, 3D printed it, absolutely loved it. But as soon as I got that 3D printer, my life changed. I completely fell in love with the technology, and I've been addicted and hooked to it ever since. But after getting the Flash Forge Finder, and then after 3D printing a number of models that would have been available on Thingiverse at the time, I very quickly realized the fun comes from designing your own projects and designing your own models. So it wasn't long before, I got the Flash Forge Finder was a great printer, a great first printer, but it wasn't long before I needed something better with a heat bed and so on and so forth. So shortly after that, I got a Prusa Mk3s, and I started designing my own projects and toys and things like that. And it's all just kind of carried on from there.
Kind of spiraled, right?
Yeah, it's funny. The company I used to work at before this company I'm working at now, the company I was working at, it was actually bought, well, it merged with another company, and I took redundancy, voluntary redundancy. But it was a transportation company. But they did get interested in 3D printing, and they actually asked me for, I think it's like the last couple of years I was there, they asked me to run their 3D printing operation.
Oh,
and
nice.
it was actually quite cool because we were doing outsourced work for Shapeways. So the printer they had was, well, the printer we had at Panalpina was the PolyJet Systems 3510 HD Max. It's an high-end 3D printer.
Yep.
But it had a really, really complicated post-processing process, but it was a lot of fun. But yeah, they asked the company, because they heard about my sort of like passion and with 3D printing, they asked me to run a day-to-day operation of that based at Heathrow, and that was a lot of fun.
Oh,
really good.
okay. So you actually spent a lot of time on professional machines as well, so the PolyJets and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's I mean, it was interesting. So Shapeways, because they have a very, very high margin. They've got a very, very strong sort of like Q&A, quality testing. So because of that, we had to have a very, very sort of like strong quality testing, in place. And it would just be like little tiny, I mean, any sort of breakages, you can send the model out. Any sort of like blemishes that didn't look right, you couldn't send the model out. It was the processing, the whole process was fascinating. So the PolyJet printer, the way it worked was it had this roller, and not roller, it was more like a jet.
It's a head with like, a few hundred nozzles on it.
Yeah, so it had 512 jets, pinhole jets on there. And what it would do is it would shoot out this resin, and then there'll be a scraper that would take out any excess resin. But it would shoot out this wax material as well. So by the end of it, you had all of these models that's completely covered with wax. So the way to get rid of it, what you had to do, you had to put the print head into a freezer. So that way that all the parts loosened up from the actual print bed. Once that happened, you then had to put all the models in an oven and melt the wax. Following, and you had to do that for a minimum of 2 hours. Then you had to put all the models in is a sonic oil bath, and that actually removed any excess wax that was on there. Then you had to put it in a normal water bath, and then, you know, again, any microscopic sort of like wax particles or anything like that would actually help remove that. After that, you then had to rinse them off in water, and then you had to put them in a dehydrator for a number of hours to actually dry off all the models.
Yep.
It was, yeah, it took about 6 hours from taking one model out of the printer to actually getting it ready to send out. It was just, it was very, there was a lot involved. So.
Yeah, those that have only used FDM and even resin do not know how complicated some of the higher end techs are. We have an Objet 30, which is it's a polyjet machine, but it doesn't have the wax head. It has a support head, but it is a soluble support. And to remove
that I would have
it,
preferred.
well, okay, right? You would think that, but to remove it, you use a pressure washer.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so you have a sealed aquarium basically with gloves, and then there's a pressure washer in the table below you. You turn it on, and it just pumps high pressure water, and you're basically shooting it off. Except obviously there's the problem of, oh yeah, if your parts are really, really fine, you're gonna have a bad time because that pressure washer is gonna blow it apart. You can use water, but it will take weeks. So they actually tell you to mix lye or caustic soda in with the water, which if you ever put your hands in water with lye in it, it basically melts your skin slowly, but it melts your skin.
So what is it, like an acid sort of thing?
It's basic. It's incredibly basic. So it's the other end of the spectrum, and it is nasty stuff. It works great. But you have this problem of, oh yeah, everything's covered in a caustic solution that you now have to rinse off and clean, and now all of that water is contaminated.
What's the disposal required for that?
Chemical. You have to have a chemical because you can wash some lye down the drain. Municipal water is generally able to handle some. But at the concentrations that you deal with on the polyjet machines, it can melt your pipes.
Okay.
So you don't pour it down the drain.
So you can't just flush it down the toilet then and hope for the best?
No, yeah. Resin is toxic, but also caustic soda is caustic. But yeah, we also do full color sandstone, so that's the gypsum powder material, and that is just as rough, except the parts are green. They need to be infiltrated with a further binding solution. So when you take them out, you're basically digging for dinosaur bones because the parts are really, really delicate. And yeah,
I mean, so it's completely covered in nail powder, isn't it? Yeah.
Which is good. Because there's no support material, right? It just comes out. But man, parts are delicate. The amount of parts I've broken over the years are just innumerable. But the high-end tech is fun, but it makes you appreciate how amazing the consumer and prosumer stuff has gotten. And you have basically turned into a Prusa fanboy since you got your Mark II, haven't you?
I mean, I am not ashamed to admit I'm a Prusa fanboy. And the thing is they do just make absolutely great 3D printers. But it's not just the 3D printer, it's the firmware, it's the software, all the parts involved. It's the help materials, it's,
it's the package.
It's their support. One of the things I think, I consider is, what if I actually became a hobbyist now compared to like 7 years ago? And now the resources available is just absolutely through the roof. I mean,
it really
I would have been fine. Yeah, it's like you go back 7 years, there was like, say, like a few hundred models that was on Thingiverse. Thingiverse used to work really, really well. You know, you compare it to how it is now, it's just a whole other thing. But yeah, the Prusa machines are absolutely fantastic. But it's not to suggest I've only had real experience with Prusa machines. I've used Cuboff, Flashforge, Gtech, Creality, MakerBot. You know, I've used many different types of 3D printing brands, and I have found that the best one is Prusa. You know, their support is absolutely fantastic. You know, you can go on for days without praising them as such.
Yeah, they're not winning any speed races, and honestly, they're
Hmm.
not trying to. What they're going to
Yeah.
win is the consistency,
Hmm.
just the fact that you plug it in, you click go, and it works, right?
Hmm.
That to me is where Prusa wins over other companies. Um,
Yeah.
and this was before I had any relationship with the company. Now, you've actually worked professionally with Prusa. I never have. So that is pretty cool to say, you
Mm.
did the Prusa Mini Mate and the Prusamate, as well as the actual mods. And I can see the full size Prusamate
Yeah.
behind you, which is just so damn cool. So damn cool.
Well, the first Prusamate, the reason that started out. So when I was with my old company, Panalpina, it merged with another one, and I was made redundant, voluntary redundancy.
Right.
And but the deal was I had to stay on for another 4 months working there because I was doing accounts there as well. So I just had to try and help close all the books and everything. And so there was a deal that was made. I get an extra bonus on top of the redundancy package and so on and so forth. So I stayed there till the end, but I left. I think it was February a couple of years. It was a February a couple of years back. So what happened was I've left there and I've made a decision for myself. I'm gonna mess around for a couple of weeks and then I'm going to start looking for work professionally. So I messed around for a couple of weeks, enjoyed unemployment, and I found myself suddenly coming under the first COVID lockdown. So, and at the time, you've got mass redundancies, loads of people being put on furlough. You know, there was no employment going. It was just absolutely crazy. So I thought to myself, well, one, I need to keep myself absolutely sane. So I started doing loads of online courses. So I was studying SolidWorks, CAD drawings, Blender as well. I learned Blender in all that time. But the other thing that came up as well was Prusa. They actually did some work, or they worked with the Czech Ministry of Health.
Yep.
Yeah, and they released the face shield. Now I remember at the time, because everybody who had a 3D printer, they wanted to help.
Yep.
So they were talking about the face mask and everything else. And in the end, Prusa came back with a face shield, which I think is still the most downloaded model in the history of ever.
I think it did beat out the Benchy, but
Yeah.
I would say if it didn't, they're very close. And that to
Mm.
me was one of the greatest things in this industry was
Yeah.
watching, the entire industry say human malware is now a thing.
Hmm.
And now, we have an ability to pick up where traditional manufacturing just can't. And,
Yeah.
I found all these people locally with 3D printers. We organized some of the shield works, and we did almost 2,000 shields in 3 weeks on our
Oh, wow.
farm. And the only reason we stopped in 3 weeks is because it took my injection molding facility about an hour south of us 3 weeks to
Hmm.
cut his mold. Then it's like, all
Oh,
right,
wow.
he can make 10,000 a day, right? There is no point for 3D printers to keep going when traditional manufacturing is more than willing to donate, right?
I mean, the thing, I've never ever been prouder to be part of this community than I was then. I mean,
Yeah.
that watching the whole community come together and so quickly as well. I mean, so I very quickly joined. I think it's 3D Crowd UK, and I started 3D printing the face shields. Everyone else I knew started doing the same, and I felt so honoured and humbled. And it is just an amazing thing to watch the entire community all come together so quickly and start throwing out, busting out with these 3D printed face shields. It was just utterly brilliant to see. But I do remember it was after a number of months, demand for 3D printed face shields had died down.
Yep.
The government around the world had, got their fingers out, really started to sort out, PPE.
Most of them.
Yeah, most of them. No judgments here.
No, look, I'm in Florida, man. Okay, like that's just do one more check mark for. Wait, this existed.
Yeah. So, and I remember at the time I've been locked in the house because, it's been locked down. It just passed my birthday as well. And I think there's a fair bit of, not just for myself, but, across the country, across the world, a fair amount of depression that was going around especially after all that time of being stuck inside. And by that point, I've already been 3D printing and designing for a good number of years. And I just thought to myself, do you know what? I want to design like a 3D printer that can just sit on your desk, and I want it to look as stupid as possible. I just want it to look daft. My thinking was, if it can make me laugh and can make one other person laugh, at least one person, then it is just totally worth it. And I literally designed it in a space of like 2-3 hours. And I showed it to a friend of mine, and I was like, and I remember saying to him, I can't share this. This is just too stupid. And he's like, because it's very different from my usual designs. And he's like, no, you have to. You've got to share it. You've got to share it. And I was like, I can't. It's stupid. And he's like, no, you have to share it. And I put it on Prusa printer. At the time, Prusa printers.
Yep.
And purposely walked away for like a good number. Came back a couple of days later. And and I find it's actually featured on the homepage. And I was like, oh, wow. And then the thing that surprised me was quite a number of people was actually printing it off and sharing prints of it as well. So it's the first. I had other designs I've done in the past where I've seen people do prints of them, but not to the extent of the first Prusamate. So I was like, well, it's certainly worthwhile doing it. So, and it's just kind of continued growing from there. So.
I love it. And actually, recently I went to California to do some scanning, and I met up with a 3D printing business owner. Their company is called JinkSpot, and this is their, their little logo robot guy. This is SLS 3D printed. They have a Fuse 1 from Formlabs, and it's just adorable. And it did, like, even with this little wiry detail, I'm trying to get it on my face so you can actually see the detail. But even with all this small detail, it lasted all the way from the plane flight from California to Florida. And I look at that and I just smile because that is objectively cool. There will be a video about that coming soon for those that are watching live, of my journey in California. It was a whole thing. I didn't talk about it too much publicly because I just didn't want people to know that I was gone. That's just a little bit weird.
Well, you mentioned Formlabs. Is it Formlabs that's got the collaboration going on with Hasbro?
Probably.
Formlabs?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, because Hasbro's releasing the customized toys, so you can get like the Stormtrooper or the Star Wars. Yeah, and they can do the customized faces. They're 3D printing the faces, I believe, or the heads that actually fit onto.
We used to do that for Disney.
You're just a show off, man. It's
I've got Snoop Dogg on the shelf over here. I'm happy to grab him.
Wow.
Yeah, Snoop Dogg's one of our clients. And that was all full color sandstone back then. Now they're doing, I think they're doing SLS or they're doing resin, and then it's somehow being painted because there is no technology from Formlabs currently that is public knowledge that does multicolor. So they're either post painting it or they're using some sort of technology that they haven't talked about yet.
Well, I believe Formlab, they've got multiple resin colors for all different skin tones. And I believe they're printing the heads.
Oh, in multiple pieces.
Well, the bodies of all of the figurines, they're already set. So they'd already be vacuum formed or whatever it is, however mass produced. The only part that's actually going to be 3D printed is the head.
Yeah.
And I believe they're being printed in whatever particular skin tone resin very closely matches your own skin, I think. Hasbro have actually, they used to do a collaboration with Shapeways.
Yes. Yep.
And I mean, it very quickly kind of died to death. I don't think there's actually that much interest. But
Shapeways is in
Hasbro,
trouble right now. If you haven't
yeah,
seen, their stock price has dipped below $1 for long enough. They got a warning from the SEC, which basically
mm,
means they either have to somehow raise their stock price by, in
mm,
influx of capital, or they're going to have to do a reverse split, or they're going to be delisted from the New York Stock Exchange, which would
yeah,
that would be a first. We've never had a 3D printing company get delisted. And hilariously, out of all the
mm.
ones, it's Shapeways. They're
Oh,
ostensibly the largest. Yeah, I would guess they're the largest, if not the second largest,
mm.
service bureau in the
I'm
world.
I'm not overly surprised if I'm honest. I mean,
Neither am I.
so their market, they always they've got a great marketplace that's online and you can sell whatever 3D models and then you would get a small cut and they'll make most of their money from actually doing the 3D print of it. The problem is because SLA, SLS, DLP 3D printers have become, well, not SLS, SLA and DLP 3D printers are so cheap now. I mean, you look at your Lego Mars and so on and so forth. It's a lot of people is using Shapeways for, for instance, like the little train models or
Right.
your Dungeons and Dragons models and, your little monster models. And because it's so cheap to just buy your own resin 3D printer now and actually print them out that way, they've lost a hell of a market. They've lost a really, really big market. So I couldn't help but think it is just a long time coming. So it's a shame because I used to do, provide a great service. But I think it's just it's a repercussion of a change in the times.
I agree. And I'd love your opinion here. Um, do you believe that resin printers are too cheap?
Mm, I don't think they're too cheap. I think there should be more education in regards to using them.
That's why I think they're too cheap. I
Mm,
think that the price has come down and the education has not changed. Um,
yeah.
I am hoping to change that, but that's going to be obviously quite a bit of work. Because
Mm,
you primarily work in FDM right now, right? Do you do any resin?
mm. I don't do anywhere. I mean, I've got rid of my last resin printer, which was a Anycubic Photon, and I got rid of that about a year ago. But it's just because I stopped using it. I mean, it was a great printer. I really did get some great quality prints from it. The problem is for me, it's always a burden. You got to put on the gloves. You need your isopropyl alcohol. Little things like I've got to open the door just to make sure. For when I'm actually using it, I need to be extra careful when I'm handling the resin. There's just it always just annoyed me. There was quite a bit involved. So yeah, at the moment I primarily use FDM. I just find it a lot more fun as well.
Same,
It's
because
mm,
there's less hazards, there's less basic PPE needed. Like maybe we should wear
mm,
safety glasses, or regular eyeglasses are normally good
mm,
enough. Something to keep the shards of plastic out of your eyes when you're ripping off support. But
mm,
otherwise, there's not a whole lot needed, right? I mean, maybe
yeah,
we should wear
it's
cutting gloves to not stab ourselves with scrapers, but
mhm,
get enough scars, it builds up armor.
mm. But it's not just that. You can actually see the growth of a model from the very first layer.
Yeah.
So you kind of get that reward straight away. Whereas with a resin printer, it's the bed is stuck in the vat and it'll be about 3 hours before you can actually get visibility of it. So it's there's nothing wrong with resin printing. I mean, I know Uncle Jesse, he loves his resin printers, and you can't help but respect that. He's done a lot of good work with them.
Oh yeah.
But I just find FDM so much more fun. It's just,
I find it easier to get people into as well, right? Because a
yeah.
failure with FDM, unless it's
Hmm.
like a really bad blob of doom, is not
Hmm.
that big of a deal, right?
Yeah.
Swipe it into the trash and move on. And Wham Bam is saying scrapers no more. That's fair, right? Wham Bam flex
Hmm.
plates, obviously. Shout out Wham Bam. Code Musketeers 2022 for 10% off through the end of the year. Gotta throw that call to action in. But their flex plates are pretty much the best when it comes to resin. But I will say some trouble when you're doing parts with lots of surface area because the plate can actually shift a little bit. Like the
Yeah.
magnet can allow it to turn a little bit. But you know, that's just part of the risk you take, right? And that's why I
Mm.
have just, if I have a big part, take out the one with the flex plate, put on the one without the flex plate, and life is good.
I mean, on top of that as well, I mean, the SLA 3D printers, their quality has increased so much. So
Yeah.
when we was doing outsource work for Shapeways, we would get, I think the best we would get is 32 microns, yeah, quality wise.
Yeah, it's about
We
right.
could get 16, but the standard we was normally doing was about 32. Now, in your normal SLA 3D printer, you can get 50 microns. So it's like you're not far off from that industrial grade quality with those 3D, with the desktop 3D printer. So yeah, again, it's another reason why, I think Shapeways' stock has just really dropped down a hell of a lot.
Hmm. It's that's fair. And now, did you see the latest DLP from Anycubic? I mean, honestly, it's like they're just racing. It was who can be the cheapest. Now it's who can be the most innovative. And
Yeah,
I'm kind of glad companies like Bambu Lab exists now because it does
yeah,
force some of the other companies like Creality and honestly even Prusa, right?
yeah.
To not rely on the old tech, right? Bambu Lab is like AMD 3 or 4 years ago when they first launched the Ryzen 1000 series. Intel
Mhm,
was just riding their coattails of we have no competition. It doesn't matter if we don't do a damn thing. Then
mhm.
AMD hit it. Intel's like, oh shit, we have to go, get all that done. And I
Yeah.
think Bamboo is going to do that. Now, whether or not their printers are any good long term is still to be seen. And that's
That's the
why,
concern I have. It's
yep,
the reason why. I mean, here's the thing. I've said if you can still get the same quality with a machine in about a year's time, then I may potentially get one. There's a couple of things. I don't really. I think Bamboo is an absolutely fantastic company. I think the way they've disrupted the industry is actually quite good, but they've done
I
it in a
agree.
good way as well.
I agree.
They haven't kind of jumped in and started bullying everybody. They've kind of jumped in and said, we're the new guys, we're here to help. And I do appreciate that. One of the things that annoys me is when people compare the Bambu Lab X1 to the XL, the Prusa XL. They're both two completely different 3D printers. There isn't really a comparison. I can understand in the sense where if you've only got the money to either buy one of them, so I can understand people making a comparison in that sense. But it's like, the XL's got a completely different
It's a tool
build range
changer.
and
I,
it's a tool changer.
I had this conversation with someone because they said, why don't you just get an
Mm,
X1 carbon? I said,
mm,
because I want to run soluble support. And there is no
mhm.
way that X1 carbon, and if I'm wrong, Bambu Lab, if you're watching, prove it.
Yeah.
There's no way to be printing in carbon fiber nylon, switch over to
Mhm.
PVA, and then back to carbon fiber nylon. Their temperature needs are so vastly different that
Mhm.
it's just not good. You're going to spend so much time on the heat up and cool down cycles, assuming the printer even knows how to do that, that
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense. And to have any carbon fiber nylon in your soluble support becomes a problem,
Mhm. Yeah.
right?
I
But,
mean,
I would do PLA supports with a PVA interface layer and then carbon
mhm.
fiber everything else if I had a tool changer.
Yeah.
Use cheap material for your supports. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But,
It's
again, so few understand that because business versus consumer.
Yeah. I mean, the Bambu Lab printer does look like an absolutely fantastic printer, and also the little finicky things they've added to their slicer, and also like the way they've got was it a laser that measures the actual height of the first
They say it's a
line?
laser. I think it's an optical
It's
sensor, but
yeah,
I don't have one
but
to
again,
test.
it all looks absolutely fantastic. So it really does look like a brilliant machine. My only concern with Bambu Lab is I think they've overreached before being able to accumulate enough cost to cover themselves. That's because here's the thing, they're pretty much already worldwide. So they're based in China, there's the US, there's Europe as well.
Fast growth can
Um,
be
and
dangerous.
yeah, now I know they had I think it's a grant of about 20 million. But the thing is, from my understanding, they've already got about 200 employees. A good
Yep.
number of them are engineers and etc. So granted, they may have the smartest people in the room, but the smartest people in the room still all have to get paid. So my only concern is they've overstretched too quickly before they can actually, really accumulate that wealth they need to actually sustain themselves. That's my only concern. So
I completely agree. And I'm also worried about their ability to support the printers in 6 months, right? So
yeah,
for me, minimally 6 months until I'm looking at it. I want to see what the average consumer has for problems. If their machines are running just fine in 6 months, it might be worth it. But I want to see, has the company made any iterations? Have prices changed? Are we seeing delays in spare parts? Because the one thing I like about Prusa, it's all open source, and if I have a problem, I just print out a part on another one of my Prusas. I need a new hot end, I just go buy one, or I have spares. I have like 15 spares, because when you have 40 printers, you need to have spare parts. And if I have to adopt an entirely new ecosystem, which objectively I have to do for the XL as well, right? The next extruder is going to be a completely different ecosystem, so fine. But if I have to adopt a new ecosystem, I want one that's going to be long-term valuable and not something that is a one generation only. Right? I don't want to have 15 tool heads for a Bambu X1 carbon, and the X2 carbon comes out and it's a totally different interface system and all that. So I agree with you. I think from a consumer standpoint, it is a tough thing to look at that and say, I don't want it. From a business standpoint, it's easy to say, I don't trust it. And it's not because I don't trust the company, but I don't trust the company. They need to prove it.
They've been very upfront and they've been very straightforward so far. I mean, Dr. Turbo on Twitter is proving himself to be incredibly approachable. But I am kind of in the same lane as you are. It's when you have a printer with that fast movements going on for about a year. Here's the thing: I've still got I've still got my day one Prusa Mk3. It still works like I just bought it yesterday, and that's a good number of years old. The same with the first Prusa Mini I bought. That still works very, very brilliantly. My concern is with the Bambu Labs printer, with all of that extremely fast movements, I can't help but think parts are going to wear down. You'll need replacement parts quite quickly. Again, I would like to see how it's running after 6 months or a year's use. So I think the company is absolutely fantastic. I think they're kind of doing things in the right way, but I think they've overstretched too quickly. So I don't think they really had to expand so much into, or have offices in America and also offices in Europe as well. I think they could have held off from that for at least about 6 months or a year, just to see how the Kickstarter went for them.
So far, they're knocking it out of the park, right? They're getting deliveries reasonably close to on time. That was overzealous to begin with, but they actually got a lot of them out on time. And a lot of the delays that they've seen is just in shipping. And you know what? That's fine, right? That shit happens. I totally understand. I'm not going to dock them points for UPS, FedEx, DHL, whatever it might be, screwing up something. Just like I don't dock Prusa for it, or I don't dock any other company for it. But I would love to see spare parts of theirs on Amazon. But I figure in about 90 days or less, we're going to see spare parts come out of, the geometric company on AliExpress that I refuse to mention because they knock everybody off. So maybe then we'll have a decent source of knockoff spare parts. But
I'm hoping they'll do well. I think they've been a very positive impact for the industry. But they're a company to certainly keep an eye on for the next 6 months to a year, definitely.
Without a doubt. Yeah, I'm going to be watching them heavily. And people like Tom of Film and Frenzy, he's kind of the one I'm watching the most because he beats the hell out of beats the absolute hell out of it. People like Uncle Jesse, Chris Perillo, the content creators that are YouTubers may not use theirs as much, specifically because it is so damn loud. When you move that
Yeah.
fast, it is going to be loud. So you can't. But people like Tom, Film and Frenzy,
Mhm.
who does just pictures or GIFs
Mhm.
online, it's a lot more easy for him to do something and still be able to do other things at the same time.
Yeah.
But I will be curious to see. I want Tom Sadlatterer to really abuse one. I think he might be the one
Mhm.
that I look at because he's pretty tough on things. Um,
Yeah.
but I'd like to
I
get one.
think
I'm
he's
just
always
not
struck
cool
me as
enough.
he's always struck me as a guy with integrity and honesty. And if he likes something, he will say so. If he doesn't, he will say so. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how his opinion, if it changes in 6 months' time.
Yeah, hey, maybe we get lucky and we end up with one. You get one, I get one, and then we
Mm,
get to abuse it
mm,
from our standpoints, right?
mm.
Because
I mean, it's funny because one of the things I did that obviously caught my eye about because okay, so with the Prusamate, you can print it in, or actually with all of my designs, you can print the parts and then you assemble them together. So one of the most common misconceptions when it comes to my designs is that MMU, or people would need a mosaic palette or an MMU upgrade. And for all of my designs, you actually don't. I purposely design them so they don't have to be printed with MMU or
I
with a
love that.
mosaic palette.
Like,
Yeah,
absolutely love that.
well, the reason for that was when I actually first started designing. I designed a transforming robot, for instance, and one of the things, all the parts have to be printed with MMU.
Hmm.
I did have a multi-material upgrade with my Mk3s printer, and it worked fine. It worked very well. The issue was the material wastage, and it's really, really bugged me. So, because there'll be occasions when I worked out I'm wasting more material than I'm actually using for the actual print itself. So it kind of changed my whole perspective when it came to actually designing. So it's like, I wanted to be able to give people designs or give people the ability to create these designs without having to waste so much material.
Right.
So yeah, and it is funny. So you see the Bambu Labs, poop shoot.
Off the
Uh,
back of the printer. Why?
yeah,
What? Like, it's so ridiculous. Where am I? Like, come on. None of us put
yeah,
printers in the middle of rooms. Like, I get the thing looks pretty, but honestly,
mhm,
that mark was just like they had every opportunity to put the poop chute somewhere else or just
yeah,
have it go somewhere. You can still have the location be the same, but just have it
yeah,
go somewhere else. They had every opportunity and they said, nah. No one puts their stuff against a wall. Literally everybody does that. Literally
yeah,
everybody does that.
yeah.
Uncle Jesse
It's
talked about that he got one without the AMS and he kind of regretted it because the spool on the back is a monumental pain in the ass. He would get the AMS just to put the spools on the top of it. Like, come on. It's so like they looked at it and said, how do we make it look as pretty as possible on the front? Which I
Mhm.
think they objectively did. But they,
Yeah,
it's the Homer Simpson when he's stretching his skin, right? He looks great from the front, but on the back, there's some stuff to still be desired. But
mhm.
that's where I think maybe iterations are going to be coming out. But the printed parts in the community with the bucket for the poop chute, it, it works. But yeah, I appreciate the hell out of that you make it so you don't need an MMU because I don't have an MMU. Um, I've never needed one. And honestly, it's part of the reason I don't like MMUs. One, they're finicky. Everyone knows they're
Yeah,
finicky. But then two, it's the waste. And where I
yeah,
live, we don't have a great municipal recycling program. Yay, America. Yay, rural America specifically. Um, and my local recycling centers do not take 3D printed parts. I have to drive quite a distance to find a
oh
place
wow.
that does. And then they require you to have everything split up. And if you have one bit of contaminant in your bag of, let's say it's all PLA and you have a little bit of ABS in there, all thrown away. It's not recycled.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strike a light. Okay.
Yeah, so that's likely an American thing, right? We talked about this a little bit off stream that, you know, there are some things left to be desired from American healthcare and education, and you know, but it could be worse. It could be
So
worse. Um,
yeah, and that's another thing that kind of puts me off with the Bambu Lab, the poop shoot, the material wastage. I it's another reason why my designs just need to be assembled together. You're not wasting anything. And on top of that, I think it's also a lot more fun when the actual assembly process as well. I mean, even though you're just sticking bits of plastic together with glue, I think you appreciate it more once you actually see the final thing at the end of it. So,
yeah, I get that, right? I have personally never built one of the Prusamates, mainly because
mm,
I don't have the space. They
mm,
add measurements that I just don't have the room for.
mm,
But I have thought about doing it on the time lapse printer just because it would look adorable while it's moving. Um,
mm.
but and because we stream on Maker Deck now, so there's a live stream of it when we do print live. But
Okay.
yeah, which is fun. Like I enjoy doing that. One, it's like a crowdsourced spaghetti detective. Just, you know, I'll get pinged in their Discord if something's wrong. But otherwise I just get to show off something running that I would normally just turn into a time lapse where you don't get to see it running for 12 or 13 hours or whatever it might be. But I like the multi-piece stuff. I don't have to deal with all the waste. I don't have to deal with if the MMU fails for some reason, and or you know, you
Yeah.
go from, on a lot of your models, you go from white to not white, whether it's black, red, orange, colors that
Mm,
need a ton of purge if you do end up going
mhm.
back to white. And man, that would just, it'd be
Yeah.
a disaster on an MMU. With your system, it's not needed, and that's what makes it so easy to print.
Yeah. The other thing with MMU as well is all it takes is for one line just to be skipped or to get a filament jam just on one line, and then your whole print is just ruined. That's all it takes, and it's just, you know, with the many hours of using like the MMU, and you end up on the 10th to last layer, you know, printed layer, and it just skips that one, and you just see that one flaw, and it's just, yeah, it's one of those things.
I,
So
I've had it.
yeah,
I've had it on regular prints too, right? It's just like, it's not about the material. It's not, it like the $10-15, whatever it might be, if you use a full kilo of filament in materials. Not the. It's not that. It's the
yeah.
3 days of time
Mhm.
that you just lost, because it never happens when you have tons of time. It always happens when you're up against a deadline, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I actually remember when we was doing the again going back to that polyjet printer we used to use for the outsource work for Shapeways. There was an occasion when, so what they used to do, they used to give us really, really long prints for us to actually run over the weekend.
Mhm.
So we'll get it started last thing on the Friday, and it would normally be just finished printing on the Monday or on the Sunday. And we'll go in on the Monday, and then you find out there was one we found it had failed with 2 hours left to go. And we worked out how much resin was actually used on the print, and plus like the wax material as well. And we ended up losing, I think it was like £250 just in materials. And it's, oh no.
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. Now, we used to do outsourced work for Shapeways too. We did it for full color sandstone, and yeah, the margins on full color sandstone were only like 60% at best, anyways. So if you
Oh,
had
okay.
if you had a failed print, you were working for free, right?
Yeah.
And Shapeways would send you parts that were not validated. So you would get parts that were like a millimeter thick. There's no
Mm.
chance they were ever going to survive anything. And, you know, they break during shipping. The client complains. Shapeways yells at us like it's somehow our fault. And yeah, it is, it's not fun. And it's why we stopped. It's why we stopped Shapeways, why we stopped 3D hubs. It wasn't
Mm.
worth the BS to us
Mm.
to go through all of that, that it, you know, for what? $100. You know, I'm doing like 12 hours of work for $100. Go flip burgers
Mm.
for that price, you know?
Yeah,
But
it's the work was consistent, but it never really gave you much of a margin.
mhm.
Mm.
Now, can you talk about some of your recent printer mates? You did the Tachikoma. I might get that wrong. From
Tachikoma.
Tachikoma from Ghost in the Shell. What
Mm.
inspired that one? Because that one blew up on Twitter. My dude, you tagged me in
Yeah.
that photo, and I'm like, oh, this is gonna be bad. And it was amazing to see, like, even weeks later, people are still commenting on it, and that is just so cool for me because I
Mm.
get to like live vicariously through you from that post and just
Mm.
experience what that's like. It must feel really good to get that kind of you know, community outreach. But what inspired that build?
Um, Actually, it would have been so. I did the collaboration with Prusa just before that for the Prusamate.
Yep.
Sorry, the official Prusamate add-on. And I gave it shoes because it's sort of, I remember looking at it and thinking, well, how am I going to justify it standing? It's like knee shoes. So I gave it 4 shoes. And there was a part of me that just kept looking at it and thinking, it looks like it should be a tank. You know, it needs like proper, you know, and I remember looking at it thinking, you know, it looks like it should be a robot, you know, like a tank robot. And it's sort of like I kept running, you know, thinking on it. I also left a comment as well on that one of those posts saying it looks like it should be like look like a tank, and it just kept running through my mind. And I remember I've always been a big fan of Ghost in the Shell, the original movie. The original movie I absolutely love. The
Right.
standalone complex TV series, I adore them. The Tachicomas are probably like the cutest and most adorable tanks in the history of mankind. You know, it's the first time you'd ever want a tank and actually want to invite it to your, you know, your home sort of thing.
Right.
They're brilliant and they're adorable. And I've always kind of looked at the Mini and just envisaged this sort of like tank personality, and it it just felt like it would so easily fit. You know, if you can give it the legs, if you can sort of like give it the eye that rotates as well, it just seemed like a natural fit. It might seem an odd thing to say because it's sort of, they are completely different things. You know, you got one which is like this little miniature cute 3D printer, and you got this little cute sort of blue tank with a squeaky sort of adorable voice. You know, but it just seemed like there's this natural connection, or sort of like, or like merging of the two. So yeah, I remember telling a friend about it. A friend of mine, Stein,
Yeah,
HBPs,
yeah,
he
yeah.
designs a surprise eggs. So yeah, he's actually a friend of mine. We chat regularly online,
Cool.
and I sort of like give him a heads up for like upcoming projects I've got planned. I run ideas with him. He comes back with suggestions. You know, I'll even show him designs that I've got in progress at the moment, and he'll come back with constructive feedback. You know, great guy. And I remember telling him the idea, and he's like, "Yeah, okay." At which point I've shown him like the progress I did in regards to the CAD software. He's like, okay. And it wasn't until complete and he's looked at it, he's like, actually, that's amazing. So I was surprised it kind of blew up as it did. I wasn't expecting it at all. I thought it would not, you know, it might maybe get like 50 to 100 likes or something like that. I wasn't expecting it to,
It got a couple
you know,
more than that.
people to yeah, I really wasn't expecting people to react the way they did toward it. I mean, if they appreciate the Tachikoma mod, I'd imagine they will appreciate the mod I'm working on at the moment. So I'm not going to say what the mod is, but I gave you a sneak peek, and you
Suffice
know,
to say,
you
it's
can't
pretty
talk about it.
awesome.
Yeah, that one I'm really looking forward to. So it's
You're gonna do more of of those, right?
yeah,
Okay.
there's another two sort of mods I've got planned. There's the one I gave you the sneak peek about, And there's also another one which I've been planning in my mind for the Mk3. And I, with the Mk3 one, thinking about it, I think it's the only real way you can mod it like this. So, and I've been thinking about it very, very carefully, because it's sort of like one of the challenges is trying to give, or when I mod, like a Prusa Mini, for instance, trying to give it a brand new sort of like personality, but still keeping it as a printer. You still need it to be able to print as it should do.
Right.
So,
Right. That must be the challenge, right? Is that the biggest challenge of just trying to get it
yeah.
so it continues to print normally, but also still has a new personality?
Yes, I mean, it's like, for instance, I mean, when I first received the original Prusa Mini and I was working on the mod to try and turn it into a Prusamate, is that it's like you move the print bed back and forth and you're trying to see where the parts are moving to. So when you add all the additional parts, the print bed will hit that part, so I can't use that area there, I can't use this area here. So it's all like you're looking at all of the areas that can actually be used, and trying to fill it up with ways to give it personality, if that makes any sense. So it does become, I wouldn't say difficult, it does become challenging, and it is something to be thoughtful of when you're actually doing any add-on. But again, Tachikoma and also the Prusa, it's kind of inspiring in a way where people would be encouraged to modify their own printers, or to give their printer legs and things like that. It does make them a lot more fun and a lot more inviting, I think.
It wasn't until I saw some of your printer mates, I said, huh, I guess I can mod the outside of them, right? I've always left them pretty stock. I make very small modifications to the Mk3s just to make tensioning the y-axis easier. I stick an Allen key underneath the screen and there's a bolt right there that tensions the y-axis. And it's amazing. It's a great print, and I do it when I build the printers, right? So it's just part of the kit. I just have the parts ready. I throw the stock parts into the corner, and then I use these ones. But I wasn't until I saw your printer mates, I'm like, yeah, I guess I can make it look different. And as long as you don't mess with the geometry of anything,
Yeah.
There's really no reason you can't do
Yeah.
this.
I mean, really, for all intents and purposes, all I've done is given it legs, which they attach to the extrusions just on the sides. So again, that's not affecting any of the engineering at all. And also, I've added something that just very cleverly fits over the top, the front Y plate. So that's all I've done. So there's nothing there which will affect any of the engineering whatsoever.
Right.
You got something that will fit over, say, the X-axis motor.
Yep.
But again, there's holes there as well to ensure there's any heat actually escapes as well, or you've got the cool down. You've got something that fits on the magnet, the magnet that fits on the actual motor, so the eye turns around. Again, very, very light and thin. It's won't affect any of the engineering whatsoever. So it's at the core of it, it's still a 3D printer.
It's just cool looking.
Yeah, exactly. It's all I've done is just given it a really sexy body. That's it.
So should you call yourself the plastic surgeon of 3D printers?
I've never. No, that's just weird.
Hey, you just said you give printers a sexy body. Okay, does that?
That's true. That's true.
Or maybe you're the personal trainer of 3D printers. That one's a little bit less weird.
How about I'm a 3D printer clothing designer? Something like that, maybe.
We will take names for Neil's technical profession in the comments. I'd be very curious to see what some of the viewers have. Yeah, this is I've enjoyed him, right? Every time I see him, I giggle, and it's like, God, we're putting a Quinley kit on one of our Mk3s. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh man, I should turn that one into a Prusamate at the same time. And that way, it's not only automated, but it's also adorable as it's ramming into things and pushing them off the build plate. Like, that's
I,
just cute.
yeah, I've got some plans for the Mk3 when I do eventually end up doing the mod for that. But on top of that as well, I mean, if you think about it, it's like, if I in the future ever do any shows or anything like that, or end up attending like a maker fair and I have a small booth or something, and I have those printers on display, it will make an absolutely awesome feature. It really will.
Jimmy Johannesson is saying plastic surgery by engineering, so plastic engineer.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. Hmm.
I feel like that's a technical, like an actual thing that someone could become, but maybe that would be a materials scientist. I don't know. Uh, but I've always enjoyed it. So what does this thought process look like? Because the Tachikoma is really complicated. There's a lot of individual components to it. How do
Hmm.
you go from this, oh, I want to make this, to, all right, let's make it? And then what programs are you using to make it?
Well, design programs, I mostly use 123D Design
Okay.
and Blender. 123D Design is an Autodesk program, which
Yep.
is no longer supported, hasn't been supported for a few years now. So, which is another reason why I've learned Blender as well. Um, although I can use SolidWorks, I can also use Fusion 360 on top of that. But for me, 123D Design is just so much quicker. So I tend to use those programs. In regards to planning, it's actually all in my head. I won't actually put anything to paper. I won't, do any test diagrams or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, with all of the add-ons, what I might do is download the STL files from Prusa for all of the parts and put those into the modeling software, and then I'll design around them so I know parts are actually going to fit correctly or anything like that. But I normally have an idea in my mind from when I actually start of how the actual finished design is going to look already. I'm absolutely dreadful. I'm terrible when it comes to planning. I don't plan it. It's like I normally have the idea in my head of how it's going to work, and then I kind of wing it all the way to getting it to work.
I would have never guessed that, but I guess that would be on brand for the maker. I don't plan
Yeah,
it, it just happens.
yeah. It's
Allison Ford, fellow UK, by the way, fellow UK resident, says printer stylist.
I love that one actually. Yes, I like that.
I, I, I,
I'm going to put it on my.
I want you to update your LinkedIn with like a really funny, I'm a professional printer stylist, right? Because like that's it's cool sounding, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm going to put that on my Twitter profile. Actually, I'm a printer stylist.
It fits. It does fit. Because you did one for Snapmaker too. My thoughts
Yeah,
on the Snapmaker A350T are not great. Um,
it's here's the thing. It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's the 3D printer. It's the CNC. It's the laser. It's all three into one. I still haven't used the CNC. I still haven't used the laser, and that's a 3D printer. As a 3D printer, for me personally, it works better than Creality machines and a number of other brands that's actually out there. But it's still a very basic 3D printer, and it's. I think the best way to explain it is my snapmate is kind of like one of my ex-girlfriends. Really pretty to look at, but no personality. It's
oh
it,
God. I can go
it,
further with this because they don't use PID. They use Bang Bang. So, there's a further part that we could go on the ex-girlfriend side of things, but yeah, the A3 it's not. God, I'll tell you, it's fast. Like, it's one of the faster printers that we have that's not custom built. But don't do tall parts on it. Or don't have it in a room that's air conditioned. Um,
oh, okay.
because the bed warps and you'll see it in your models.
Oh, well, that hasn't happened to me. And in fact, I've only printed very, very slowly on it. I haven't printed fast. And
I'm doing like 100. You can do 150, no problem.
Huh?
You can do 150 millimeters a second on those, no problem.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I've only been going fairly slowly.
It's all lead screws, so there's no backlash. You can just go for it.
Okay. It as a printer, it's just okay, but it's like my go-to is still my Prusas. It's if I want a quick print, I'm going straight to them.
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong, the Snapmaker's right there. But yeah, you know, if I need something and it fits on the Prusas, it's going on the Prusas.
Yeah, precisely. It's not a bad machine. It's just not great.
Right. Allison is wondering if she gets royalties.
No.
Boy, rough.
No, she may get a mention. But Alison, thank you for the fantastic suggestion. I really like that one.
Yeah, I think it works perfectly. Now you got to do one with like a mohawk. I need like a Dragon Ball Z Goku printer mate. God, that would be ridiculous.
Well, it's funny you mentioned Dragon Ball Z because you know the one I'm designing at the moment. So
I do. Yep. Yeah. Unrelated to that, I did not, you know, that was not to give the audience a hint as to what you're designing.
Well, in fairness, it's probably the worst hint I could ever give them. So.
Oh yeah, that's a really, really convoluted hint. I'll let you know how many people reach out to me and ask what it is. So what do you do outside of the printer mate? So what is your profession outside of this?
Believe it or not, I actually work in the transportation industry. So the company I work at the moment, I actually do accounts, but from my perspective, that helps fund my hobby. Although in fairness, I'm now in a situation where that my hobby actually funds itself. So it does make me money, which helps me get filaments, new printers, a new computer a couple of years back. So I'm in a unique position and a humble position where my hobby pays for its. And here's the thing: it's not a cheap hobby. It can work out quite. Yeah, it can work out quite a pricey hobby. So I'm certainly in a very, very fortunate position where I do make some money from it. So in regards to my full-time job, yeah, I do enjoy the work. It's good, it's fun, but it's completely unrelated to 3D printing in every single way. So
one of my good friends, former podcast guest Courtney of Filament Stories, knows all about how expensive it can get. She has over 600 kilograms of filament, and every one of them is a different color.
Wow.
Her entire, content creation, she's a YouTuber, TikToker, that kind of thing. Content creator extraordinaire, mom, and all the fun stuff. She has like bunkers of filament, and they're all organized by color, right? And she, of all people, will know because that filament's not cheap, and she's getting some filament from exotic locations, crazy shipping prices. And it's astounding to see it, but, similarly, she's a professional in the industry. I hope, some of it is paid for by the channel and all of that. And one day I'll eventually be able to have the channel pay for itself. But right now it is what it is. It's still fun. And yes, Pezlas, you do need to visit Courtney just to see her bunker of filament. It's pretty awesome.
Well, in regards to revenue stream, I've got a full-time job. I do some money through licensing agreements I've got for the printer teams, which is always nice, a nice little bit of pocket money every single month. Yeah. And in regards to my Patreon, that does make a little bit of money, but I am closing my Patreon in next month. It wasn't the easiest decision to make, but it felt like the most prudent one to actually make. So my Patreons, they've pretty much wholly supported me for like the last couple of years because of the Little Cities project I've been doing.
Yeah.
So they don't just receive Little City designs, they also receive various other designs every single month as well, normally an additional printer tune, or, you know, there might be other variations, etc. But the Little Cities, in regards to, I got about halfway through of designing, I think I've designed about 20. And then it reached a point where it's like, well, and this is probably the only time I've ever actually planned something. It's like, well, now I need to create a map because this is all going all over the place. And so I need an actual map now to figure out how I'm going to finish it all off. So it's about half, when, you know, once I reached halfway through. So I did about 20 little city designs and thought, right, how am I going to finish this? And once I've done the map, I've realized there's going to be 43 in total, which
Wow.
is, yeah, and I've got 3 left to do. So I've actually said to Patreons, what I'm going to do is, you've got the 2 little city designs coming this month. I've already said to them, okay, next month you're not going to be billed, and I'm going to release the last little city to you lot for free. And it's been a hell of a project, but it's been so much fun, and I'm so glad as well that I'm kind of reaching the point where it's like, okay, yeah, this is now going to be finished off now, because it's been, geez, it's been a long time.
Well, it allows you to go after other projects, other ideas,
Yeah.
other printer mates, that kind of thing.
Well, I do have, so there's a couple of designs. As soon as Little Cities are completed, I do have a couple of designs, and once my Patreon's finished off as well, I do have a couple of designs I want to finish off. So I have started them. They're not related to Little Cities or Prusamate, but I want to finish them off, actually get those shared online. Following that, in a way, I want to kind of go back to like education, or sort of like go back to teaching myself. So I really do want to improve my sculpting skills. So my plan is to spend about 2-3 months just really concentrating on blender sculpting and just really improve those sort of techniques I have, because there's a number of, and that's because there's another fairly large 3D printable toy project I have in mind, which I estimate is probably going to take me about 6 months to a year to complete. And it will involve a fair amount of sculpting as well as CAD. You know, it's pretty much going to use all of my design skills all in one. And also some design skills are really, yeah, it's a really, really exciting project. There's nothing else that's actually like that's out there that's like that at the moment. So it will be quite unique. It will be very different.
I like that you're not just pushing your boundaries, but you're doing it in a public way where you're going to apply the skills into something. A lot of us will learn skills just to learn them, but I appreciate when people say, I have a project that I need to learn a specific skill for. I'm going to learn that skill and I'm going to do that project. And even further, I think you're breaking the maker aspect of you're planning ahead of time, knowing you need that skill, not, oh shit, I guess I should know how to sculpt. Because I will tell you, Blender from a newbie's perspective is rough. It's rough.
Yeah.
And I've always wanted to be better at designing. I know some Fusion, not great at it. I can't use Blender to save my life. And ZBrush, I opened up once, looked at and said, huh, those menus are in alphabetical order. File is not in the top left. I don't like this. Goodbye. And that was as far as I got into ZBrush. And seeing you really push yourself like that, that's pretty awesome. I commend you.
I mean, this project I had in mind, I mean, the thing is as well, it's kind of modular, but it's not. So there's part of me who thinks it can be done in stages, but really in the back of my mind, it's sort of, I'm thinking to myself, I really need to design all of it, even though it could probably be done in sections and possibly be released to Patreons. When I'm looking at it realistically, it's like, well, each section is probably going to take me a few months to do. And I don't want to rush any of it. So it's like, and I'm not entirely sure if it's all going to work until the last part's done. So, which is what I might do is sell I mean, this is way jumping ahead in the future. I mean, I need to still actually learn or improve my skills in regards to sculpting, actually create entire projects and everything. But I don't feel it will be a suitable thing for Patreon to actually help support me as I go with it. But the Patreon, I mean, in fairness, it's helped me save up a number of money. So money I've made from Patreon is gone into a savings account, and any filaments I need, I can just take out of that. So really, in fairness, this project in the future is actually thanks to my Patreons I already have. So I have a hell of a lot to thank from them. You there?
I got you. Okay. I thought
Yeah.
I lost you there. I got you. Yeah, I got you now.
Oh, it's just come up and said the internet connection is unstable. So
Yeah, you're in and out, but we're picking up most of it. We're picking up most of it.
okay.
Filament Story is actually saying that Nomad Sculpt is pretty easy to pick up, so I'll have to look at that. I think that's an iPad thing though, which might be a
I
problem.
I'll be honest, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Nomad at all. So
Is your goal then just to kind of become a master of Blender?
um I'm quite comfortable in Blender as it is. So during the first lockdown, and I found myself, I was actually unemployed. I made a point of studying Blender, and there's a course I did, and it had 40 hours of video footage tutorials in this course, and I treated it like it was a job. So literally at 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning, I would go downstairs. At the time, my computer and my printers was in the garage. And so yeah, I would go down there at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I would just work on these courses and these tutorials for up until about 5 o'clock, 5:30 at night. So and it had two positive impacts. One, it kept me sane during lockdown, and two, because I was treating it like it was a job, I wasn't going insane for being unemployed. But yeah, and I did that course in its entirety, and I did. You reach a point where you do find yourself fairly comfortable in Blender, just at least with like the basic or the intermediate sort of things. I mean,
Right.
I know Blender is massively intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anyone up there that decides to themselves, I want to learn Blender, don't just jump in. I highly recommend, for instance, Blender Guru's donut tutorial. It's probably the best one you could do. It's just that there's and the thing is, Blender is kind of split up into like different sets. So you've got like your design, you've got your your sculpting, you've got your grease pencil, you've got your animation. There's so much involved, but for starters, chances are you won't need all of it. So for
Right.
yourself, for instance, I mean, they've just created a CAD add-on as well. So really, your chances are you'll just need like the CAD sculpting, just off by practicing doing terrain or like green wood, things like that. Not actual character models or anything like that. Just of doing, like just that, or want to add creases into clothes, things like that. And also I'd recommend just mesh pulling. So, you're manipulating or creating models that way. You don't need to learn, for instance, animation or anything like that. You can learn it to further on down the future, but just learn the initial basics first. Or best bet, think of a project and think to yourself, what do I need to learn for that actual particular project? So
Hmm.
the chances are you won't need all of it. And in fairness, even professional Blender users can't use all of Blender. They find themselves having to go back on tutorials or check things out online because they come across things they don't know how to do.
Well, that's the value of the open source nature of Blender, right? Because there's so
Yeah,
many add-ons and possibilities. I did not know there was a CAD add-on, so you can do full
yeah.
parametric inside of Blender now.
I wouldn't say it's full.
Okay.
It's quite new in. experimental stage, and it's just an add-on. But it does look like they are trying to introduce a sort of like a professional CAD usage, or at least a very basic CAD usage within Blender.
I mean, that is honestly how you get me away from Fusion. That's legitimate, because it's no secret that Fusion 360 and Autodesk have been kneecapping their software every single year. They just raised their prices, honestly, for no good reason, like just because. And they removed features after raising those prices. And that's frustrating to makers. And, you know, as it was, they kneecapped the free maker license anyways. To have options other than FreeCAD for open source CAD would be amazing, because FreeCAD is for masochists. If you've ever tried it, it is the only live stream I have ever done where I wanted to learn something, and I just would used to do live streams for it, where I not only rage quit the live stream, I deleted the video. Like, just straight up deleted the video, because it was just, dude, like, pulling teeth. I'd go get teeth pulled. I've never had a tooth pulled. I'd go get teeth pulled, then use FreeCAD again. And I know FreeCAD is getting better, but it is, like, not even close to what people are used to. I would love to see a more open source version. Like, okay, yes, Onshape exists, but Onshape, if you don't pay for it, all of your models are public.
Yeah.
Kind of a problem. You've got, you know, some of the other, you know, you could use Tinkercad, but it's pretty much useless. SolidWorks, the maker license is 100. Huh?
Well, 3D Print Bunny uses Tinkercad, and the models she's creating are really, really impressive. So
that's fair. Maybe because I just don't know how the hell to use Tinkercad all that well. So it's honestly about the person, right? You know, and what they're able to do with it. I just wish we had, because Tinkercad, of course, is still Autodesk. I just wish we had better open source and heavily supported, you know, CAD packages. I just remember when Autodesk dumped some of their features, FreeCAD tweeted, "Hello, former Fusion users." I'm like, okay, all right, I'm here for that kind of shade.
I like that.
Yeah, you know, because they know their market. They know that they're the second fiddle to Fusion, and they're working on it, right? And Courtney said the Hero Me is all made in Tinkercad, right? Yes, it is. Yeah, so we actually recently interviewed Andy from Hero Me, and it is all in Tinkercad. So apparently Joseph said it took him 6 months to transition from Fusion to FreeCAD. I tried once, man, and it scared the hell out of me. I ain't doing it again.
I mean, one of the things I am concerned, because I've mentioned previously, I use 123D Design, and that hasn't been supported for years. But for me, it was so easy to pick up. It just seemed like a very natural graphical interface.
It is,
and it just seemed very natural the way I actually learned it. I just much preferred it to Fusion, SolidWorks, Tinkercad, and it just seems so much nice. My worry is it's only a matter of time before I won't be able to use it anymore. So I'll end up with a Windows update, and that's it. You know, I can completely forget about 123D Design, which will be a massive shame, because I do think it's probably the best. It's the easiest, I think, modeling software to actually learn, and it's such a shame Autodesk stopped supporting it, because it was really, really good.
I didn't realize that you could still use it. I used to use it back in the day too, and now I transitioned a few. Well, okay, we used 123D, then we went to Onshape. Then Onshape said, "Oh, you're not paying us? Yeah, none of your models are private anymore." Okay. And then we went to Fusion, and that's where we've been ever since. Because, like, as a small business or even a small company or even an individual, you don't want to spend a ton of money to build a CAD, you know, to use a CAD package. And when you look at something like SolidWorks, that's like $4,000 a year. It's way too expensive if all you're doing is making fun projects like the Printermates. 500 for Fusion, fine. Like, fine.
Yeah, but that's still a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
I mean, really, when you're a hobbyist, you don't want to be paying that sort of money. Just to, I kind of like the way. Okay, so Unreal Engine. If you download their software, they've got a really neat way of dealing with it. So I believe the way it works on Unreal Engine is if your game makes over 1 million, you pay us 10%, and that's it. It's for everyone else, it's completely free. But if your game makes over $1 million, you 10% just goes straight back to us. And I think that's an incredibly fair and decent way of dealing with it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can't imagine there's going to be many designers out there who are actually going to make over £1 million with a designer or something. But, maybe something along the lines of, if you do have a company that makes over 1 million, then yeah, you pay us, say, £10,000 subscription or something like that. I
I
just think,
like that. Like,
yeah,
I
but do
would
it as
go
a
for
tier
that.
system. Yeah, I think it's especially when it comes to hobbyists, when all they want to do, they just want to use the software to actually just practice it. I mean, you look at it from this perspective as well. You're going to be practicing your craft. You're going to be learning the software. And let's be honest, a lot of people will want to be doing it professionally as well. So they go to a company and they start using it there. That company will then actually start making even more money.
Yep.
Yeah. So I do think charging, for instance, I mean, I thought Fusion 360 was still actually free. Am I wrong in that? Or
It is free for non-commercial use, and you only get 10 active projects at a time.
yeah, okay.
So yeah, can you use it? Yeah, okay. Autodesk, there's really no way for them to know if you're using it for commercial or not. So that
Yeah.
in that respect, it is very much an honor system.
Mhm.
I have a paid license and I have an education license. So when we're doing stuff for YouTube, I use the education license. When I'm doing stuff for clients, I use the paid license. And don't get me wrong, 500 a year is not bad, but it's over $1 a day for a program that I might use twice a month personally, right? The staff use it way more than I do. I'm not an engineer, but I still need the program to
Yeah.
run my business. Now, mind you, it's one of the cheaper subscription softwares that I pay for every year. Artec being one of the more expensive at $1,200 a year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
For a 3D scanning software. But it works and it works damn well. And they update it often. So all of that stuff makes sense to me. But it is difficult to look at that and say, okay, Fusion 360 is losing features every time they update it. Why do I want to pay for this again?
Yeah, it's also a little bit depressing when you find yourself, when they start restricting like the file types you can actually export and things like that. That's when it's sort of
They
like,
did
it really.
cut that. They're not doing that anymore on the consumer side.
Okay, that's good.
Well, all of us got mad at them, right? I was not a YouTuber back then, I don't think. If I was, I would have made a video yelling at them. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But I remember Tom specifically being one that yelled at them, right? And said, this is ridiculous. If you want people to go to another platform, go ahead and keep this. But if you want them to stay, you need to remove this. Like, they removed the ability to export a step file. Like, you serious?
Yeah,
Well,
that's quite naughty.
only professionals need step files. Go to hell. Everybody needs step files. And now that Prusa Slicer, which of course they ported from Bambu,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool, is able to import step files. Oh my God, my life is so much easier. Like, seriously, from a business standpoint, I'd have to upload the thing into Fusion, download it as an STL, then put it into Prusa.
I mean, for me, it's always been a case of you upload all the STL files. Whenever I share a model, you upload all the STL files. And on top of that, I always try and make it as easy as possible as well. So the STL file names will normally say if supports are required, or if there's a color change, you need to actually set in Prusa Slicer, that sort of thing. But now I'm need to say, well, I do upload the step files as well.
You can upload the 3MF file of the color changes and all that happening as well, where you need them.
Yeah, I don't think I can. I think I get 3MF files from 123D Design, but the colors aren't always right. Or I've had a problem with that in the past. So
Mm.
step files definitely, I can certainly upload, but it's sort of like, geez, it's something else to upload now.
You know, I think if somebody request for what you do, a lot of people just want to print it and install it. If somebody
Mm,
wants to modify it, say step files are available upon request, and if you get more than 10 people asking, you've already downloaded the step files. Just upload them and then change it to now including step files, right? Some people might want it, some people might not. But I understand like people's trepidation of putting up step files because it makes it very easy for me to steal your work, change it, and
mm.
make it mine. And that's not really what the culture's about, in my opinion. Right?
I
Yes,
mean,
remixing is a
it's
deal, but
yeah.
you got to credit.
I mean, I love featuring I've added with Prusa Slice, I think, and I also love the fact that they're very, very eager to make sure they give credit where credit's due. That I really, really like. The, I mean, you mentioned something just quite interesting just now, which was actually going to lead us to a conversation I was hoping we could have. And you was talking about, theft, being able to take a model, you can kind of modify it and make it, but it was I was hoping it was going to lead us to a conversation on Creality Cloud.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that all day.
Yeah. So,
I've
I
done like
mean,
4 videos on it. We talked with Shane from Big Orange.
yeah,
You know, they still haven't fixed it. It's still bad, and I think a lot of us have just kind of given up because what it did
it's
is it made them more popular.
yes and no. So they're better. They have. Okay, so you might remember when I did the tweet about talking about how their import tool from Thingiverse has no security features in it.
Yep.
And I wouldn't say I complained about it, but I pointed out and said that this is one of the reasons why they have such a problem. And they did respond and say, okay, we are going to fix that. We're going to apply a security feature on it. So, and they did. So now if you go onto their Creality Cloud and you want to do an import from Thingiverse, unless it's your own profile, you're not able to. So in that sense, that's good. But it also felt like a hollow victory. It was a victory, but it was a very hollow victory because it is the bare minimum that they could do. And they did, as soon as they fixed it, a couple of hours later, they released another tweet basically stating, this is how you report models on our website. Again, completely shirting the responsibility. I mean, it's like, and I was a little bit annoyed because it's like, look, I just praised you guys for doing that fix on the, the Thingiverse import tool, and you now do this, and it's sort of like, you've got to take responsibility here. All they needed was just one extra employee just to overview all uploads. That's it, and one, maybe two employees. So you're talking about, however much the actual wage is. The problem is they've set themselves up to fail.
Yep.
The reason for that is because they've mixed it. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, a real sexy cyborg, she made it very, very clear. The reason they're doing it is they want to do a very quick sale for the whole of Creality. They want to sell it and become millions overnight, and etc. etc. So the thing is, whether that's true or not, we don't actually know. But
Yeah.
so the thing is, their marketplace is a slicing software, and they're actively encouraged to share all models within the marketplace. If you don't, you're going to get charged for it.
Right.
So, and they've got like a little tier system. So if you want to keep your models private that you upload so you can use the slicing software, you get a certain free allowance, which is only a very small allowance. And then after that, you need to pay for additional storage. If you don't pay, it's uploaded for free onto this marketplace, so everyone has visibility. The issues arise is, let's say, for instance, just to use the slicing software, you've paid for a 3D model or you're somebody's patron, and so it's a paid model, and then you share it onto the marketplace. You have now shared a private model which was for your own personal private use, and you shouldn't have.
Yep.
Which is again a massive issue. So, and those will have their own CC licenses or Creative Commons licenses and etc. The issue you will find, or they're going to find, is one. Let's say, for instance, I want to 3D print a bench sheet, so I upload it onto the marketplace and then I'll put it into the slicing software. Now, if you go to Creativity Cloud right now, you'll probably find there's about 20 bench sheets uploaded on their marketplace.
Yeah.
So it's very quickly going to be filled up with the same crap over and over again. So if it comes to, let's say, for instance, I wanted to use the marketplace and find a specific model, if I've got to search through the same 20 models over and over again to get to the one I actually want,
yep,
I'm going to be quite annoyed, and it's not going to be the place I actually use. So in the long term, that's a dreadful solution. Or it's a dreadful system they've created, because it's like, you're not going to have the repeat custom. You know, a lot of people are going to be using it maybe a few times, and it's going to start. They might go back to Thingiverse because, or you know, My Mini Factory or Prusa Slicer, etc. There's so many better options. The thing, all they've done is just in the short term, it's just created this alcove or area of so many different models and STL files, just so they can turn around and say, oh yeah, there's 100,000 models on there. What they're not going to tell you is yeah, about half of them are bench sheets. Like they've just, in the short term solution, just turned around and said, you know, so we've increased our value by so many millions of pounds. When the truth is, in the long term, that's going to dwindle very, very quickly.
Yeah, I think it was identified that by default sharing was on. So anytime that you sent a file to print via Creality Cloud, it auto uploaded to the site. Which was funny to see all the people that were printing not safe for work things that are not body safe, that were printing something that is supposed to be an internal use. Anyways, that was just funny for me to see. I'm like, oh yeah, that's gonna suck when you get plastic toxicity, but fine, whatever. You do dumb shit. And when they were called out about it, they added the ability to turn that off, but it is auto on, even if you set it off. Every single time you send a file, you must click, no, I do not want it to be shared. And that's the problem. So I think a lot of what occurred was involuntary, right? People did not know that they were doing it, but the ones that were clearly being sold for money, they knew what they were doing, and they didn't care. But I do have to agree with Naomi a little bit in that this did seem like a shitty play for them to try to buff their portfolio. But with how often they're making printers, honestly, why, right? It's like, do what you do marginally okay at, which is make cheap ass 3D printers that are hopefully not fire hazards. Don't play in a game where, you know, you're going up against titans and you're not able to even get close to competing. You know, because I think Wednesday's video will be this, but we have a video coming up soon about what questions to ask somebody that wants a 3D printer, right? So I'm sure you get it. I know we get it. I know a lot of other content creators get it. Hey, I want to get my first printer. What should I get? And a lot of us can say, get a Prusa. Well, that's too expensive. Well, okay, why don't you give me some more information about what you want, and then we'll talk about it. Right? I had someone say, oh, I only have a budget of like 300 pounds. I said, save your money. Do you like tinkering?
I have adopted the response, get a Prusa Mini.
I agree. That's what I tell people. But if they don't have the budget, it's like, well, what do you tell people without the budget? I say, okay, you've got options. Your option is either A, wait. 2, wait and outsource. 3, buy a cheaper printer and understand that you're going to be putting a bunch of time and money into it. Now, I will say the Elegoo Neptune 3 is on my list of printers that I want to look at because it has a lot of the features that I would look for. One of the big ones being auto bed leveling.
Yeah.
I will not buy a printer that does not have auto bed leveling. I will not spend my money on something that does not have it. Now, if it gets sent to me for a YouTube review, that's different. But I will not spend my money on a printer without auto bed leveling, because auto bed leveling is required if you don't want to hate yourself, in my opinion. I recognize some people have amazing experiences with manually leveled beds. I don't. I was manually leveled. I've been in this industry for 14 years. Back when you manually leveled your bed and you were happy that you had a bed to print on. Okay.
Yeah.
And I just don't get why people are so focused on the money when they really should be more focused on how much of my time am I going to spend making this a printer that I like to use versus how much money am I going to spend to have a good printer from the beginning.
Yeah, I had a Creality CR10, and it's by far one of the worst printers I've ever actually owned. The bed wasn't level, the bed was warped. Trying to get the first layer on it was just a nightmare. In the end, I actually took it to my work, and we used it as the FDM printer in my workplace because I didn't want it in my home. I hated it. The motherboard blew 3 times. The motherboard had to be replaced 3 times.
Quality.
And it was dreadful. And then on the last time we was looking at it, and we could see that a number of the wire connectors, it looked like they'd been on fire or were very, very close to it. And we were like, do you know what? Let's just get. And I stripped it for parts at that point. So it's just, but leveling the bed again, A4 sheets of paper in all the corners, and it is just an atrocious experience. And I put in much more time in there than I, should have ever been willing to. But again, it's what actually got Creality on the map was the CR10, but it was just a dreadful machine.
I've got a CR10 V3 clone. I need to rewire it because definitely didn't have a rodent in the garage that ate the bed wiring. But let's be real, it was doing me a favor because the ends of those wires were soldered, and then they were in those screw terminals, so it was going to catch fire anyways. It was doing me a favor. That'll be an upcoming video at some point too. How to rewire the bed on your 3D printer for no other reason than I just have to do it, and I'll film a video for it. But like, it doesn't have auto bed leveling. I'm gonna buy a bed probe for it. Now, I got that printer for $185. An Amazon Prime deal. $185. I will buy a CR10 V3 size, right? 300 by 300 by 400, and I will put an auto bed leveling kit on it. Or NH3D Canada is saying that they think the term auto bed leveling is misleading. They think bed tramming is more accurate. It is. Technically, it would be skew compensation is what we're dealing with, because we're not tramming or leveling the bed. You're adjusting your z-axis in certain points. So you're dealing with skew correction, basically. But like, I'm only doing that because I know I'm going to put like $200 worth of parts and my time into it. And it's going to be a big printer that I'm going to put a V6 on because I've got a bunch of V6s laying around. I'm going to put a TH3D auto bed leveling kit on it because Tim already said he would send me one for it. I just got to let him know when I do the video. And I get to teach people how to do that stuff. So there's like a triple win for me in that regard. Then I get a big printer that uses PID, Snapmaker, that that should be reasonably reliable. The big thing for me about the CR10 size, they don't fit anywhere. They're so damn big. I don't want a bed slinger that big. I want a Core XY with a bed that goes down, or an XY gantry that goes up. I don't want a bed slinger or a Cartesian style with a 300 millimeter bed. It's too big.
If you look at it from this perspective as well, I mean, your person's been in this industry for a good number of years now, and you know what you're doing. So you could take a CR, make all the additions to it, all the additions onto it to work. Whereas as a first printer, you know, this is probably the worst printer you could actually recommend.
Yep. I and it's tough because I might title the video "Why the Ender 3 is a Bad First Printer," and we're gonna catch a lot of hate for that because there are a lot of people that have had phenomenal experiences. The thing is, they've forgotten all the time they put into making it work. They've forgotten all the time that they've asked, Facebook groups, Reddit groups, on Discords, and others have helped them. They've forgotten, all the little things that they do that I just like. You know what I do for my Prusas? I grab the bottle of Windex. I do 2 spritzes on the bed. I wipe it off with a paper towel. As long as the right filament's in, I click print. And I walk away. I don't even watch the first layer anymore. I just get shit done. What?
It's one of my old habits that I still have when it comes to my Prusias is I still use purple glue stick, and I probably get a lot of hate, but it's always worked. A point of view where
it makes the
part don't need
so
to fix it if it's not broken.
It makes the part so sticky, though.
No, not at all. You just give them a quick wipe and they're fine. It works, and I'm not going to complain about it. So
and that's fair, right? I almost always will just take a little bit of alcohol and some 4,000 grit sandpaper and just lightly buff my build plates before I use them to give them more surface area. It's not required, but I just do it. I'm being called out in the comments by Pez Liz. She says the man with giant speakers. Liz, there is a difference between a business and a passion. So stop that shit. That is not the attitude that we do here. I did get some giant speakers. They are 5 feet tall by 3 feet wide, and they are electrostatic, and I am very, very excited to set them up. There's going to be a lot of videos on audio on this channel coming very soon. So if people like 3D printing and they like audio stuff, they're going to be a lot of fun coming soon.
Very good. What reason have you got the speakers? Is it what you're going to set them up with?
Amps, or what do you mean by setup?
I mean, so what is it? You're going to set it up with your television, so it's a home surround system, or you're going to set it up with your computer for sound quality? I mean,
dedicated 2-channel listening room. Like it's going to be in a dedicated room. Planned videos already are 3D printing for sound deadening panels, 3D printing to raise the speakers up some more. So we're going to build risers for the speakers. We're going to just do audio tests of deadened versus non-deadened. We're going to look at using 3D printed spikes as a means to remove standing waves. There's a lot of things that are planned. And if you like audio, you're going to love it. If you don't like audio, those videos may not be for you. But yeah, the speakers are huge. They are Acoustat, the Monitor 4s, for anyone that wants to look them up. They're huge. They're 5 feet tall and they're 3 feet wide. And most of that is speaker. Mad Cat USA is
the interesting project.
It is. Yeah. And they're running on massive amplifiers, big Adcom monoblock monsters. Amps that weigh 55 pounds, and there's 1 amp per speaker level of amps. Cause I don't mess around. Mad Cat USA is saying, dealing with all the issues with my Enders has made me a better printer. I can diagnose and fix my issues now myself instead of freaking out if something happens. That is the one tip that I like about the Enders. Because they break so damn often, you learn. It's why I say Enders make great second printers. When you have something that's reliable. Absolutely. Go get yourself an Ender 3v2 once you have a Prusa and have fun with it, and, do all the upgrades, potentially brick a motherboard, go put a big Tree Tech SKR board into it, right? Have the fun when you're not like needing this thing to work because you already have something that's reliable. Then it's different. It's not a frustration, because the last thing that we want for newbies is to have frustration. And that's why you build your printer mates the way that you do. You do it so you don't need an MMU, so everything fits together. It's a little bit of glue and you're done. And all of that makes for a better scenario overall. Um,
I mean, with the Ender like V2 and the Ender V3, I really don't have much negativity towards them. I mean, I know a lot of people have actually had very positive experiences with those printers. So, and you know, I'm not going to dissuade people. I mean, if people do want to get those printers, you know, I'm going to say, yeah, go for it, because you know they're not that bad. I mean, especially when you compare them to like when there's so many different other
it could be
brands and
worse.
actual
It could be
models.
worse.
Yeah, precisely. But there is a part of me that thinks you are going to be spending some time to get it to work right if it isn't working right.
Absolutely. And big thanks to Filament Stories for the $20 super chats. She said, giant speakers videos, please. Also, the East Coast Rep Fund for Grant. I appreciate it. Mad Cat USA saying, nothing wrong with big speakers unless you're compensating for something. I am compensating for a small room that they are going in, and I am very sad about how small that room is, but it's going to work. It won't sound amazing. It could sound better. Fine.
I really thought that was going to lead somewhere else for them over there. So,
oh, I know. That's
yeah.
In the video. I think I might say and you know, some people might say that I'm compensating. I am compensating. I do have a very small room. It is a very small room that these are in. Yeah, they should be quite a bit further apart, but you know, it is what it is. You know, they look bigger because it's in a smaller room. Okay, all right. Yeah. No, I am not about a thinly veiled dick joke on this channel. I'd make them all the time. I am not against it. But yeah, it is. I like Enders, but I don't like them for first timers. I think that they hold a very, very needed value in this industry. But I don't like how they've become the de facto. This is your first printer, right? Pez Liz with the $10 Canadian super chat says harassment tax and the East Coast Rep Fund for a month. Because it's in a month. So thank you, Liz. I appreciate that. But yeah, it is it's a thing, right? Do you don't have an Endermate, do you?
No, I don't. So like the Ender 3, I mean, I have considered doing it. The reason why I haven't done one, I think, is because I'm kind of I've been unhappy with Creality in the past. So, for instance, CR10, you know, for instance, with the Creality Cloud, for me, it doesn't seem right creating like a Creality mate, because it's like I don't really want to create any advertising for, especially with the way Creality Cloud is at the moment. You
That's
know,
totally
for
fair.
me, it's like, yeah, for me, it's a contradiction in terms. It's, you know.
I feel that, right? And to the point of, I don't show the Creality printers on the channel anymore. And I've bought my Creality printers. I don't have a working relationship with Creality. I bought my Creality printers. And at this point, I would not take a working relationship with Creality. Quite frankly, the reason I wouldn't say to do a Prusamate or a printer mate for the Ender 3 is because by the time you're done designing it, they've already released 3 new iterations of it.
That's very true, yeah.
And that's not to say it takes you a long time. They just release a damn printer every friggin' week. And that is ridiculous. You know, so, and I've talked about it. I reviewed the Ender 3 V2 that I bought for 185 or 165 US dollars, right? And at that price point, they're punching way above their price class. There are some things that I wish were different, but from a hobbyist standpoint, if you don't value your time, they're great machines. If you value your time, go buy a Prusa. Filament Story said, Neil, some of us have been lobbying for Grant to make it to Earth. I don't know if we've succeeded yet. I hope we have. Yes, I am going to Earth. And I am hoping that I get a really, really cool piece of technology before we can go, because, man, that would be so much better. I'm bringing one of my high-end scanners to Earth, and we're going to scan people at Earth. So we have an Artec Eva that we're going to take with us. And that's
Are you going to be doing like 3D prints of them later, or?
I'm going to give people the data. So
Okay.
anybody that I know, like personally, like people that are, you know, commenting on the channel and all that that are there, I'm not going to bill them a dime. I'm going to do the scans. We're
Oh,
going to
nice.
film them, right? So we're going to turn it into content. And then I will send the STLs when I get home.
Okay.
And that's just, you know, hey, thanks for being on the channel. Thanks for supporting us. Here's a scan from a $20,000 3D scanner. Enjoy.
There's a point. What's the latest with the? Is it Artec and Creality? What's the
It
latest with
is.
the?
Let me find out. Give me just a second. I always have that tab open because I want to follow it heavily. Let's see. More. Okay. The last thing that we have is a motion for judgment for Kickstarter. Kickstarter wants out of this lawsuit bad, and it looks like they are trying to do that. But there's been a lot of extensions filed, so last real update is an order of motion for extension of time to file. So I will actually throw that in the chat so people can see it if that's their thing. But that is the link that I use constantly.
All right, so it's just ongoing then. So.
Yeah, it's still ongoing. I do not expect this to be something that is over very soon. And hilariously, I actually visited Artec's one U.S. location. It was right where I was in California. And I said, I want to buy this cable. They sell a cable that I needed, a battery cable, to go from the battery, the $800 battery, to the $20,000 scanner. It normally comes with the battery, but I bought my scanner secondhand and it did not have that cable in the box. The cable they charge $30 for. They also then charge you $30 to ship it. And I am not paying $30 to ship a $30 cable. That is insane. So instead, I flew across the country to do a job for a client, and I picked up the cable while I was there. And I got recognized by half of the people that were in there. Apparently, they watch my channel, and I'm a little bit worried. I said, good or bad? They said, no, you're good. I'm like, so then why do you troll me about not being good? Because you need to learn the scanners more. I said, okay, then train me.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I didn't buy through a reseller. I bought it secondhand. So that means I have, you know, the only training that I have is just from my experiences using them for years. So, yeah.
That kind of reminds me, there's a project I've been working on with a couple of friends of mine. We've been basically we want to create a 3D printed watch, and
yes.
I'm doing it with two friends as well. So I'm actually, out of the three of us, I'm the designer, I'm the one that's designed it. A friend of mine, he owns a watch repair shop in Doncaster. We always tease him about going dogging and Doncaster, that sort of thing. And my other friend, he's the guy who's kind of puts together. He's also like the ideas, branded, that sort of thing. You know, and he also asks loads and loads of questions because he's got an amazing talent for not understanding anything about 3D printing or design or about watch repairs. So he's got no idea about, but he's learning with us all. So the watch case is actually, and it's all going to be 3D printed in metal. So we're actually doing it, well, I believe we're going to be doing it with materialized. The case is going to be in stainless steel. The dial is going to be 3D printed in a material called Inconel.
You're going to make a dial in Inconel.
Yeah.
For those that don't know, Inconel is one of the hardest metals on the planet, and you can make it harder by hitting it. It's kinky like that. Inconel is used in rocket engines. That's about the only place that Inconel is actually like legitimately used for its purposes, is rocket engines. And Neil, I don't know if you know this about me, but I am a amateur horologist.
Right. You're gonna have to explain what that is.
It is not the study of individuals of a different sex. It is clockmaker. Hold on, I'm grabbing one. I'm grabbing one of my favorites. This is my 1950s Ansonia crystal regulator. It needs to be rebuilt. It was shipped to me from a former employer, and it was absolutely destroyed, and I just have not had time to do it. But this thing is all brass and glass. It
Hmm.
it has a radium dial, so it glows.
Okay, that's cool.
Radioactive, but it's leaded glass, so you're protected. Just, don't open the door to the clock and hold your mouth open, and you'll be fine.
Mm.
But yeah, that thing weighs like 2 kilos or so. Yeah, about two and a half
Oh wow.
kilos. Yeah, it's solid brass and glass. I mean, and it's all mechanical. You have to wind it.
Hmm.
I love that kind of stuff. So a 3D printed watch, I would rock the ever loving hell out of that.
Well,
In
what
fact,
the
I
sorry,
have
go on.
access to titanium printers. So should you decide you want any of it made out of titanium, I'll hook you up.
I think I have to follow that up. I think, yeah. And on that, so seeing as you know a fair amount about clocks and watches and things, the movement is going to be a 6497 movement as well. So
Oh,
quite a high end movement.
yeah.
So yeah, it's really, so we've just gone to materialize with parts. We've already done a test print as well. So that's literally just the shell of the case. I've now come back with a design, or sort of like added features on the actual case with additional design, to really sort of like sex it up, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've now gone back to materialize, said, all right, give us the quote and then we'll go forward with it. So that it's actually quite an exciting time. The prototype as well. Oh, on top of that, my friend who owns the watch repair shop, he's going to order some like professional watch luminous paint, and there's going to be some little painted features on the actual Inconel dial as well. And yeah, I'm really, really excited to actually get the prototype in my hands. It'll be a couple of months yet until I get it, but
Oh,
I'm really, really looking forward to it.
please keep me updated on that.
Yeah, I will do. Well, I can show you some draft images once we're actually done with this. So, but I think you'd appreciate it.
Well, hilariously, before I started using that cheap IKEA clock back there, the
Mhm.
clock that we used for our time lapses to show time passing was from the mid 50s, and it was a wind up bedside alarm clock.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a Baby Ben. Yes, like Big Ben, but Baby Ben. It's
Yeah.
called a Baby Ben, and that's what I used. It wasn't very accurate in terms of time, but it doesn't matter, right? It lost
Yeah.
about 10 seconds a day, which for movements that old that you really can't service, it's pretty much expected. There's backlash and stuff in it, but those are all fully mechanical. I like the mechanical portion of
Yeah.
it. It's engineering pornography, right? So to know that you don't just make badass, adorable printer mates, you also are looking to do watches. I'm down, because my smartwatch, a Fossil Gen 3, is now boot looping. It does not
Oh,
have enough battery to get itself to boot. So it tries to boot, the battery dies, and it starts the whole damn process over again.
so you didn't try and jailbreak or anything? It's just
No,
because the battery's.
because the battery died. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. So
Isn't that under warranty or anything?
no. So I'm not salty at all. No, I would never be salty about something like that. I'm very salty about that. And I'm very upset because that shouldn't happen, right? It just
Yeah.
shouldn't happen. So I think I want to go to something a little bit less smart and something quite a bit cooler.
Yeah.
When I can say the entire damn watch is 3D printed, done. 100% done.
Well, the watch case will
And
be 3D
metal,
printed. The dial will be.
and I mean, even further, the metal place that I have access to, we're going to do a video series on how to run a titanium metal laser 3D printer. So that we could do that in conjunction with making the parts. That would be a really cool like collaboration video series. So we'll talk off stream about it.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. I'm still interested in that.
Neil. I don't know how long I've been talking to myself. Neil might not be here. Oh, wait. I think I got him. You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I don't have audio for you, buddy.
Oh,
Apparent Mad Cat USA says, I remember Baby Ben clocks. My grandfather had one. They say Apple Watch. Not an Apple Watch fan. I can see you moving, Neil. You got audio?
Yeah, can you hear me?
No audio, buddy.
Oh.
Unless, wait a minute. Oh, yep. Okay. Got you now. We're good.
Okay, you can hear me.
Okay. Apparently, everyone else could hear Neil, but I couldn't. So, go figure. Okay. Well, Grant's going crazy, I guess.
Well, thanks for muting me. Yeah.
No, I think I muted. I think I accidentally hit the mute button on my keyboard, but it won't mute you to the stream. It just mutes you to my headphones, so they can hear you, and I sound like an idiot. So that's normal. I always sound like an idiot.
Well, for the last 2 minutes, all your audience would have heard is, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. But no, we should definitely collaborate and try to print some of those in titanium, because Inconel is cool, but it's a little excessive for a watch dial.
Well, the reason for the Inconel is it's one of the few materials that we could actually print in such a small dimension. Mm-hmm. So it's the thickness of the dial, I believe it's 0.8 mil. So it's not even 1 mil. I mean, this is really, really thin. So, and on top of that, we've got Inconel is a very strong material. So even though it's actually only a few layers, it's very strong and sturdy. So it when we did the test print, it just seemed like a really good material to actually use. So, I mean, I know it's used in like aircraft engines and things like that.
Yeah, it's pretty much exclusively used in aerospace. I know 2 people that have ever printed with it, right? Mm-hmm. One of them is SJ. They are at Inconel on Twitter, INCONELLE, Inconel. And they are one of the masters of Inconel 3D printing in the world. I've been trying to get SJ on the podcast, but SJ's been going through different jobs and all that. They're currently with Velo 3D, which does a lot of Inconel.
Okay.
But yeah, that I'd rock the hell out of it. Just saying, would rock the ever-loving hell out of it.
Well, I'll show you like draft images or sort of CAD images of the actual watch, and I'll also show you pictures of the first prototype we've got as well. So,
was it the one that I saw on your Instagram from a while back that was MJF printed?
Possibly, that might have been the first prototype, yeah. Okay. Although the next one's going to look very different compared to that. That one was just to literally make sure all the parts fit together. So
makes sense. And that's the beauty of 3D printing. You can start with a lesser material, be able to prototype it for relatively affordably, and then you can go up to the higher end stuff when you really want to show off. Well, cool, man. Is there anything else that you want to discuss, or do you want to call it here? So we've been going for over 2 hours.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think we just call it here. I mean,
Do you want to give any hints for those that have watched all the way through of what's coming up next?
Oh, for the next mod, you mean?
Yeah. You don't got to show anything. You can just tease it.
I will show something. So it's pistachio green from Prusamate. Mm-hmm. That's the only clue I'm giving them. So
that does not help any more than the last clue.
I know. I'm being purposely vague. The reason for that is because I've got a very nasty habit of jumping the gun, releasing surprises, or talking about what my plans are for design in the future. This one I do genuinely want it to be a surprise, and I'm really looking forward to finishing the design, printing it off, getting it applied, and sharing it with the world, because it's one of those projects that I do find myself looking forward to actually jumping back to it. So, but because of that, I want people to kind of experience the excitement that I feel when I'm actually designing it, when I first show it off. So I do genuinely just want it to be a surprise. So, tough titty. I'm not giving away any more clues than that.
Sounds good to me, man. Well, Neil, thank you for hanging out, talking everything from printer mates to audio to watches. This has been awesome. Thank you again for your time, man. Do you know my outro or no?
Sorry?
Do you know my outro?
I've got no idea. Right.
Okay.
What is your outro?
I always ask. This has been Season 3, Episode 1 of the Making Awesome podcast. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one.